Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. My guest today is Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, an interesting survey put out by the CFIB this morning, looking at restrictions and masks, etc. Let's first talk about restrictions. Many small businesses in Canada obviously support the lifting of restrictions. I'm curious though, what are the ones that they are most wanting to be lifted?
Yeah, look, there have been a variety of restrictions that have been maintained in Canada over the last months, and some provinces are ahead of others in lifting them. But when we look at our data from a national perspective, it's capacity restrictions that are the piece that really businesses do want. Some provinces have already lifted them, but others have just moved into 50% capacity restrictions. Many of the Atlantic provinces, Ontario today, still is under a 50% capacity restriction in many types of sectors. So that's number one. The second is a lot of the travel restrictions. And we've all heard stories about kind of the ridiculous bureaucracy that we have set up with Omicron spreading in both Canada and the US and around the world in largely equal measure among both vaccinated and unvaccinated, requiring people to do 2 PCR tests when they're coming from overseas, or a PCR test before they cross the Canada-US border. That seems very heavy to a lot of business owners and has limited traffic. Third was vaccine passports. We now have a majority of small businesses supporting the elimination of the vaccine passport systems. There is a sizable number, though, that do want them maintained. About a third of small businesses are suggesting that they be kept, but 2/3 say that vaccine passports should be dropped. Vaccine mandates for employees, which of course was part of the trucker convoy, or at least the main issue there. There is majority as well to scrap that. It's only masking where businesses are split, and they're almost equally split as to whether mask rules should be kept or should be ditched.
Let's talk a little bit about the mask thing. It's a lot of the restrictions, obviously, the reason the word restrictions is in place because it restricts stuff, right? And it restricts businesses and business revenue and operations. But I'm looking at the mask thing, and I think while we still have those masks in place, right? Do you think that's a signal out there to people that we're not through this yet? And that has something then goes to the consumer confidence of going out and frequenting businesses.
Look, there's a lot of COVID policies that were put in place because they needed to be in place, especially at the beginning when we didn't know what the heck we were dealing with. Our major complaint is that a lot of these policies just stuck around forever with nobody actually questioning whether they were adding value or not. And I would include vaccine passports in that mix. But there's no question that there are some consumers that are out there that basically are absolutely afraid to go out and are hesitant, even more hesitant when restrictions lift. Just yesterday, as Ontario announced its lifting on March 1st, the vaccine passport rules, there were tons of people out there tweeting that they were never going to go to a restaurant for the months ahead because they were afraid of being mixed in with the unvaccinated population. It's interesting, though. Public health officials are now saying that with Omicron spreading among both the fully vaccinated and unvaccinated populations, they're questioning whether the vaccine passports are making any sense any longer. The original goal was to put them in place to try to get more people to become vaccinated. But even public health officials are admitting that there's not much juice to be squeezed out of that lemon any longer. The masking rules would be another thing. Yes, there are people that are going to become more comfortable to go out if they're still wearing masks. And of course, that's their right. The question at hand is whether they should be mandated. This is less of a business restriction and more of a restriction on individuals. And that's why for us, we've spent less time focused on mask rules, more time focused on the business restrictions like capacity rules or passport systems, because the business is responsible for a large chunk of the administration of that.
So as we see the movement across the country, and you mentioned Ontario yesterday and the lifting of restrictions, Saskatchewan and Alberta kind of led the way, and then there's other provinces that are doing so as well. Do you foresee a future in the next, I don't know, month or so where everything is past us?
A couple of things on that front. Look, I do believe that we will, within the next couple of months, we will lift the vast majority of provincial restrictions. Yeah. The feds seem to be going in a different direction. They are the ones that, of course, added the new restrictions, the vaccine mandates on truckers. While provinces are lifting the rules, the feds are increasing the rules, and that, of course, led or at least inspired the convoy in the very beginning. Yeah. I suspect that a lot of the federal travel rules, like vaccine mandates for airplane travel, train travel, etc. I think the feds are it's going to take them a long time before they lift some of those rules. I do believe that provinces will lift the vast majority of their rules within the next several weeks. Some provinces, as you noted, Alberta, Saskatchewan, ahead of the pack. But there are active plans in almost every province now to lift the vast majority of COVID restrictions. But Mario, that's only really step one to the small business economic recovery. Because as you said, stated earlier, regardless of what the restrictions are, there are many consumers that will remain afraid. Yeah. And I understand that. I mean, for 2 years, we've told people it's dangerous to leave your home. It's dangerous to be in a room with an unvaccinated person. And so it's going to take a while before some of those consumers feel comfortable to go back to restaurant dining or go to the theater, or for goodness sakes, take a vacation. Many people are hiding in their basements still. I have friends and family that are in that category. Yeah. It's going to take some coaxing to get those folks out. And I will say, this is where we need governments and public health officials to come to the table again. I'm not suggesting that they need to do this today, but in the very near future, as COVID numbers, if they continue to drop, if we move into the endemic phase where severity is not a big issue any longer, we're going to need public health officials to tell Canadians it's safe to go back to life. It's safe to go back to their office, to go to a restaurant, to go to a movie. Some Canadians, there are many like myself who will be early adopters, will be absolutely delighted to go out the minute the restrictions lift. But there are others that will need some encouragement to do that. We'll need to hear from public health officials because they've been told the opposite. Yeah, for almost 2 years now. All right, super. Thanks, Dan, for joining us today. Anytime, Mauro. All right, that was Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.